Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is a presentation about the CHARMEU quality and accreditation work that we have been doing since we started probably in November 2019. My name is Roisin Smith. I am the lead for the CHARMEU quality and accreditation subgroup. And joining me today, I have Ana Prades from ACU Catalonia, which is the quality agency that CHARMEU used for the master's program for the initial accreditation, and Jake Byrne, who is the work package lead for the pilot, which is the master's. So between the three of us today, we'll try to give you some overview of how we started and where we are now, and also some of the challenges that we have faced in this journey. So, okay, do you want to go? Yes. So this really is just in terms of the where we started, I suppose, is obviously as a project. And this is our project structure. For those of you who were in the room at the previous session, you heard some other people describe how they sort of set up their project structure. But really, the only purpose for this slide is to show you quality and accreditation subgroup was part of the future governance and management design group. So that's where we fit it in. And then also just to show you that the sort of project phase is really from 2019 to 2022, and then beyond 2022 is the long-term strategy phase. Okay, so that's just how we were established in terms of the CHARMEU. So yes, so then I just want to go really and tell you a little bit about the quality and accreditation. And our first task was to design a task for a process for initial accreditation using the European approach. So obviously, even to start this, as I think Patrick gave a very good statement this morning when he was talking about what does governance mean, and it's trying to coordinate fragmented systems. So we started obviously with 5, but there were 5 partners. We now have 8 partners. So there was obviously a need for legislative changes in some partner jurisdictions to facilitate the achievement of alliance objectives, and certainly that happened in France, Spain, and Hungary. The European approach is the only available instrument designed to overcome national jurisdiction constraints to joint programs. And then there were, in some of our jurisdictions, there were some national conventions on degree titles that could impact on the award title of a multidisciplinary joint program. And there was also national conventions on ECTS values for progression to doctoral level programs. So they're just some of the things we started with, because obviously this is a master's program. So as a result of this master's, people may well go on to do a doctorate. So you want to make sure that they are in a place that they can do that from this project. So they were just some of the starting point challenges. And if you want to go into the next one, then sorry. And then obviously gaining an understanding of each institution's or jurisdiction's quality assurance. What you have is we have 5 partners who we set out, and each of those partners have different quality assurance arrangements at either the program level or at the institutional level. So you had 2 different, you had 2 different models across the 5 jurisdictions. And then I think the role of the different stakeholders in validation and accreditation. So in some of our jurisdictions, in 3 of the 5, you had to actually, the quality agency and our ministry had to give approval to initiate a program. So whereas in others, such as my own in Ireland, Trinity is a designated awarding body. So we don't have to go outside the university at all for anything to do with the initial accreditation programs. And then, so in many of those, as I said, in 3 of our jurisdictions, either quality agency or ministry approval was required to initiate the program, and also their cooperation was required in order to get the program listed on the national qualifications framework of that jurisdiction. Okay, so there was 5 universities, but when you sort of roll out the number of players, that sort of doubled, and in some cases trebled the number of stakeholders you were trying to deal with. So if you want to go into the next slide. So this is essentially the process that we designed for European approach to quality assurance of joint programs. This is the process we designed to get through, and obviously we had to work. We worked with ENQA, we worked with the agencies, and we worked with the ministries to get this process approved to start with. So what we have, I think, one of the other work packages, as I said, you saw on the first slide, was there's a work package 3, which is about curriculum design. But I think one of the most innovative aspects of CHARMEU is we have knowledge creation teams, and they are representatives of all of the different universities, academic representatives, but there's also external stakeholders who are from the different fields that we specialize in our programs. So between those two, the work package 3 and the KCTs, they were cross-institutional groups, because one of the very first things in the European approach for joint programs asks for collaborative design. And so this is the collaborative design phase. And then we had a proposal that went through the 5 different partners in different iterations for approval, and a consortium agreement that also had to be signed. So at the end of an extended period, we had a proposal which had been designed by everybody, a consortium agreement which had been signed by everybody. It was decided that the programme would go through the Trinity College Dublin approval process, and so the programme, the first iteration of the proposal, came to the Trinity College Dublin Graduate Studies Committee, and that's just where it goes in Trinity. If you for first step approval, it goes to graduate studies. But then we worked with under the European approach with ACU, who became the coordinating agency, and ACU's role was to essentially set up and coordinate the external panel process, which we will speak of in a few minutes. And then this obviously assumes that out of that external panel process there's a positive report, and then it goes to the Trinity Trinity College Dublin University Council, and so that will be our second level approval and final approval. Then it went to ACU again as a coordinating agency, and then because that's a quality agency, and under ENQA there is and under the European approach, there are already agreements between all of the quality agencies around automatic recognition. So once ACU had approved it, then NBAO, the Hungarian Accreditation Council, and Heraclisaris, the French, also approved it. And then it went on in terms of program registration and then the award. So it's an award by 5 universities. So that is the process that we agreed with using the European approach. That was at the end of multiple, you can imagine the drafts of this that was drawn up. But yes, so that's sort of a high level process. If you want to go to the next slide. I suppose one of the things as a project, and I don't know whether, I must ask actually about the people in the room here today, whether you're part of the first 17 university alliances and the second tranche of university alliances, but time was really of so much importance. We dealt with time, trying to get things, once the approval process. So obviously, in terms of getting it approved and getting it marketed, because we started our program in September 2021, so we were working back from that. But in terms of the panel, the process, which again, our representative from ACU will speak about their experience. But what we did is each university proposed the names of different experts that we wanted to have on the panel. These were confirmed by the national quality agencies in 4 of the jurisdictions. Obviously, Trinity didn't require the approval of the National Quality Agency, and then ACU confirmed the panel and worked with the final nominees for the panel to basically provide the training for that panel, but also to support the process. And because it was in COVID times, the panel visit occurred virtually versus face to face. And then essentially that visit occurred in November 2020, and then they had to go through the process of working quite fast actually to get to the final report and to get to the final approval. So the final approval, so the panel took place in November, as I said, and the final approval came in January. That was really fast by standards, and I must actually thank Anna for the speediness and efficiency of the process, because essentially where we were starting the promotion and admissions process for our new masters in March, for a master's that was due to start in September. So you can imagine how compressed all of that was. But you know, it was very beneficial for us to be there, because essentially if we didn't meet that September background, that September timeline, it would have had to start in January or March, and we wouldn't be where we are now in terms of our experience. So thank you very much. You want to go to the next slide? So our challenges, and these are the challenges, I suppose, for everybody here who's involved in any of the quality work in the alliances. So the time set, as I said, the time frame set by the CHARMEU Masters in September 2021 meant that the work of the quality subgroup starts much earlier. So we had to work to create documents, policies, procedures to meet the evaluation process that started in November, that occurred in November 2020. So anybody here who's involved in the quality and accreditation aspects, you're working earlier and harder than most of the other subgroups that are in your project. Selecting a quality agency, as I said, to act as the coordinating agency, understanding their time frame. As I said, ACU was very efficient and actually made a 2-month time frame, but some of the other time frames, some of the other quality agencies said it would take them 9 months, which meant we wouldn't have met our September deadline to start. So as I said, and then also understanding the coordinating agencies' requirements, so their terms of reference for the European approach. And then one of the other challenges, which is after the external panel, is achieving mutual recognition of the masters, even following a favourable external panel outcome. So you can't assume that there's going to be shared understanding or interpretation of European framework documents among partners, and there can be tensions between national legislation requirements and cross-jurisdictional objectives. And that comes up again and again, not just for initial accreditation, but even after the program starts, you've still got those tensions between the national jurisdiction requirements and cross-alliance objectives. So these are the documents that AQU Catalunya asked for, and these are on their web pages if you want to go to their web pages. So the terms of reference, obviously, and the guide for the ex-ante accreditation of joint program using the European approach. If you want to go to the next slide. We had a panel of 7, so we had an expert in transdisciplinarity, because transdisciplinarity is one of our principles, and we really wanted somebody with that. We had experts in the 3 fields, where we had food, water, health, and life. We had 1 professional, so we wanted somebody who would be maybe a person who might employ somebody that came out of the masters at the end. We had a student representative, so that was from the European Students' Union, and we had a European quality expert. So we were looking for an expert that had experience with the European approach. And then these are the 9 domains of the terms of the guide that we had to meet. So they align with the European standard guidelines. This is from the AQU, from the ACU document, and the 2 that are asterisks were particular Spanish requirements, so justification and expected results. So they were in addition, so we complied with that. And then the external review report is also on the ACU website if you want to take a look at the reporting of the outcomes that came through the process. I might now just pass to Anna. Sorry, if you want to go back. And let Anna talk about her experience as a quality agency in assisting in this process. Anna, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your kind invitation. I'm sorry I couldn't come here in Montpellier. It's a pleasure, and it makes me very happy to collaborate once again with CHARMEU. Yeah, I wanted to begin with 3 questions, and don't worry because I'm going to make a point about these 3 questions. The first one is if you had to pick a country, which one would you say that it has the first external quality assurance agency? In which country do you think the first quality assurance agency appeared first? If you had to pick one, if you have picked United States, you would be right, okay? And if we think about at which century these external quality assurance agencies were created, if you had to pick a century, which one would you pick? If you pick the 19th century, it would be right. So it was where it was created, and when it was created, the first quality assurance agencies, both generic and professional ones, were created in the United States. And the point of this question is why? They were created there at that time because they had a diverse system, right? With cross-jurisdictional mobility. They had mobility and they had cross-jurisdiction, so they needed an external quality hallmark about if you could confide in that professional, if you could have trust in that professional, in those graduates, right? So, and in Europe, we saw the great expansion in the 90s. At the beginning of the 90s, we only had 4 external quality assurance agencies, one of them in UK, the other one in Netherlands, France, and Denmark. But nowadays, we have more than 55 quality assurance, external quality assurance agencies. Why? Because we have internal mobility, because we have this European education area, right? So mobility needs trust, and to trust, you need transparency and you need independency. You won't believe a center that says, hey, I'm good, my graduates are really, really good. You need someone else who is independent, who has impartiality, who has consistency and expertise in order to determine if you can have trust on that professionals. And I wanted to make this point because I feel that sometimes we lose focus about what external quality assurance is about. The first university was in 1088. We didn't need external quality assurance then, and we didn't need them until the 19th century and in the United States, not in Europe, right? So, yeah, the main point here is that external quality assurance agencies were created just to help initiatives such as yourself, such CHARMEU, right? So you will find in us, Alice, always. The challenges, I think that Roisin already has explained some of the challenges that we faced during this assessment, 5 different countries. Luckily, all of them had external quality assurance agencies that were in ENCA and in ECAR also. They were ECAR registered agencies. So most of us knew each other already. There was a lack of experience in these external quality assurance agencies about the European approach, except for INBAO, which is an expert in that kind of assessment. And Roisin has already said that 4 of the higher education institutions involved in the alliance required external quality assurance at program level. What else? We led the evaluation, but as Roisin has explained, we didn't have specific standards aligned to the European approach, so we had to build this methodology. And we had this pesky business about these extra standards that we needed according to our legislation. But if you look at the report, you won't find these standards there. Why? Because this report answers to the European approach structure. I remember a conversation with INBAO where INBAO told me, Anna, I'm very happy that you have this, well, I'm very happy or not, but that you have this extra 2 points according to your legislation. But if we are using a national approach, then I'm going to add my own national approach requirements, right? So if you are using a European approach, you can not add additional information. That's why in your external report, in the external report published on our website, you are only going to find information related to the 9 standards of the European approach. Okay. What else? The external review panel was a Movistar committee. They were really experienced. The secretary was Ronnie Haynes. He was in PEA project, so he's an expert in European approach. So it was really easy to me to coordinate this project. The collaboration, I want to say that the collaboration with the 6 external quality assurance agencies and ENCA was excellent, was extremely good. And that's it, okay, about this aspect. And regarding the evaluation process, it was the usual one, nothing new there. The selection of the panel, the self-evaluation report, they had to analyze the self-evaluation report before the site visit. There was a preliminary meeting before the site visit. Then the site visit, the review report. This report was sent to our Institutional and Program Review Commission, which emitted the formal outcomes and decision, and it was sent to Trinity College in order for them to be able to present appeals. And then there was the final reporting. What else? The calendar, Rosina already said it, it was really, 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 really tight. And it's not usual for us to be able to do this. We did the evaluation process in 46 days, which is like, you know, absolutely tight process. It was feasible because the external committee was really committed in order to do so. They complied with all, they understood the tightness of the schedule, and they were very committed in doing their work. And it was possible because of the leadership of Meritxell Chavez and the willingness and commitment of ACU's director, Martí Casadesús, in order to make succeed this project. But usually it takes 6 months. It doesn't take 46 days, right? So we had to appoint an emergency meeting of this institutional committee in order to emit the final report. What else? The results of the assessment were the program was complying in all the 9 dimensions of the European approach. And to recap, my final conclusions of this process, I wanted to highlight that we've come really a long way from 20 years ago, and there is a lot to celebrate, okay? 20 years ago, there was not the amount of trust necessary for the European University Initiative to succeed. There was distrust among countries and even within countries. And I think that there has been a lot of work done through these 20 years with the research projects, with Erasmus+, with the harmonization of the systems, ECTS, the national qualification frameworks, etc. And the harmonization of the quality assurance systems. The success of ENCA, ECAR, EWA, EURASE are at the basis of these European university alliances. So let's celebrate a little bit our achievements and not only commiserate about what we have not achieved yet. Okay, I wanted also to highlight that Spain has changed the legislation afterwards this assessment, and due in part of CHARMEU and also other Spanish universities involved in European alliances. Nowadays, at the moment, we don't have these extra 2 points to comply in our ex-ante assessment. If an assessment comes from a joint program or a European university, and it follows the European approach, and it's led by any agency in ECA register, nothing is going to happen. We don't need an extra layer. We don't need an extra layer. Another good conclusion of this experience is that European approach framework does work. It is fair. It is a simple solution. But Axel Arden from Envao would say it's a no lasagna approach, no extra layer, and it did work. And I think it's also important to highlight that there are 2 very European projects that finished last year that are very important and relevant for these alliances. The project IMPEA, which deals with the European approach, and the project EUNIC, that proposes a system for institutional review of the quality management. And of course, there are challenges ahead. The main challenges, maybe it's the changes in legislation to ensure the recognition of the European approach. You can scratch Spain from this list. That's nice. And then, of course, there's a challenge for the European institutional accreditation. This is a challenge because EUNIC is a project, but it has to be approved for the ministries. So, and there's a procedure inside about, the final adjustments of the model. And then once it's approved for the ministers, then you need to change the legislations because Spain does not foresee this possibility still, okay? So this is a challenge. And with this, I'm going to finish. That's it.
Thank you very much, Anna. So what we might do now is go on to the next phase of our work as quality and accreditation subgroup, and that was about designing the CHARMEU quality model. Because as somebody else said here this morning, we started from scratch. So if you want to go on, sorry, to the next slide. So this is people might be aware of this forming, storming, norming, and performing. You get it a lot in team management or in change management. And this is really where we are. And I've used the dates from what were the project phases and from what will be the long-term strategy. So we are still very much in the forming and storming phase of our quality model. So if anybody came here today expecting perfection and maturity and integration, I'm afraid we have not delivered that yet. So hopefully we can come back in a couple of years' time and let you know what our progress is. But we're very much still in the forming and storming phase. So if you want to try to think about the CHARMEU model, at the very beginning, everybody was talking about sprints. So we had several sprints that we had to do. So sprint 1 was designed for the process for initial accreditation, which we've already discussed, and that was really from September 2019 to September 2020. Sprint 2 was design of the quality assurance policies and procedures for the external panel approval. So that really took place in October, November 2020. I think we wrote around 5 policies and procedures in 2 months. You know, they were draft, like they weren't approved by the academic board or anything, but they were draft for submission for the external panel. So, and then we had to then go through the whole design approval and quality and publication of quality assurance policy procedures for the CHARMEU masters. So obviously we had a master's program and we have a CHARMEU website. We need to populate that website, but also those of you who live and die by the European standard guidelines, there is a standard on public information, you know, and so we had to make sure that we were actually disseminating knowledge about the masters and our rules and regulations. And so that all happened really between March 2021 and October 2020, March and October 21. And then Sprint 4 really began with what we call the implementation of the first quality cycles. So really the first quality cycles, we ran a pre-program survey, which essentially the first 70 candidates did in the first week during their orientation in September 2021, and we have the results of that then in November 2021. And we've just now finished, and Jake will present today, the results of our phase 1 survey. So we finished the first phase of our masters. We're currently in phase 2. So they were our sort of first 4 sprints. And then if you want to go to the next slide. So in terms of the quality model, this is sort of the architecture, I suppose, of the quality model. So obviously we have the European framework documents, European standard guidelines for everybody who works for quality, European approach to joint programs, qualifications framework, ECTS user guide. Then we have the CHARMEU framework documents. We have the collaboration agreement, the master's proposal. We have admission regulations, assessment regulations, mobility index, inclusivity index. And then we had the policies and procedures, and these are sort of the ones that we started with. We've got more now, thankfully, but we still have more to go. So we had a quality management system policy, new program design approval policy and procedure, complaint policy, appeals policy, data monitoring and survey process. So this is where we were at the very beginning. And then we have our organization, which are all of our boards. We'll get more of that in terms of governance later on. Our people, obviously, our students, our KCTs, our expanded network, as I said before, of experts that contribute. We have mentors, professional staff, project management team, and stakeholders, and then our systems. I don't know if anybody was in the room for the last presentation, IT. We have a VLE, we have an e-portfolio system, student information system, then staffing, finance, and the CHARMEU website, which is really the one I was focusing on for quality, because it is about ensuring that we have public information. Okay, and then the next slide then. So this, I suppose you could say, is our quality model from the beginning. So this is something we established in, say, February, March 2021, so before the beginning of the Masters. But this is very much, and this is our starting point. So this is the program life cycle. So we have obviously collaborative design, which I think we were successful in, the program learning outcomes in the curriculum, and then the joint approval recognition process, academic rules, regulations, policies, procedures, marketing, recruitment, information, and then where we are now, which is in collaborative delivery, and then we've got the quality assurance, which obviously is happening. And then this is our student life cycle down here. So we have admission, registration, induction, the experience of teaching and learning, mobility, inclusion, learning supports, student supports, assessment and examination. So we've had phase 1 of assessment and examination. Progression and retention, so we've had phase 1, progression and retention, and then we also have obviously the completion, graduation, and make sure that we continue to engage our graduates and our alumni and monitor where they're going in terms of their career, because this is a very innovative program and we want to know who is attracted to graduates from this program. And then obviously the quality life cycles, Plan, Do, Check, Act, and how we want to achieve this are through surveys, focus groups, quality metrics, data monitoring, enhancement activities, and what are we interested in? We're obviously interested in student satisfaction and engagement, the education principles. We're interested in ensuring that, you know, the education principles actually, our students experience those through their student journey. We're obviously interested in appeals and complaints. Workload is something we're interested in, integration and accountability. So this was where we started. This is before the Masters started, so it was before we went live. So I don't know whether you can actually click on these links here, but this is the CHARMEU website. Can you click on that? Okay. Sorry. Can you click on that, CHARMEU? So this will hopefully bring you to, it'll go to show you the work that we've done if it does come up. But yeah, no. That's all right, don't worry. We have probably 9 or 12 policies and procedures on that website at the moment. Yeah, oh, there you go. So yeah, so we've got the quality management, you can scroll down, quality management policy, the new program policy, procedure approval, program monitoring and review policy, fields procedure, fields policy and procedure, complaints policy and procedure, services policy, teaching allocation policy. And then on other pages, we have our regulation, rules and regulations. So there's quite a lot of work to do in that. And obviously you're dealing with 5 universities. One of the things we have now to do is that we have 3 new partners. We have to go through these 3 new partners, the current policies and procedures, because obviously they're not reflected in them. That will bring us into 2 new quality systems or jurisdictions. So the German system and the Finnish system, of which at the moment I don't have any understanding. So, you know, you do have to make sure that policies and procedures are acceptable to those new partners as well. Maybe we might have to make some changes. Okay, you want to go to the next? I just said, as an example, I know there is a session this afternoon on inclusion by my colleague Agnes. But I just wanted to show you, just taking an example of how we're quality assuring inclusion. So inclusion is one of our education principles. And one of the things from the quality work package people were that all of our policies and procedures that we developed were provided to the inclusion work group for review. So if you take a look at them, you'll see that there's like inclusion as a principle in all of our quality assurance policies. So that was one thing. We also included questions on inclusion in the pre-program survey and in the phase and module module survey, which Jake will speak to shortly. And care was taken to include inclusion was embedded in CHARMEU processes. So our admissions procedures and our grant request procedures. I'm just going to go through those two with you. Just one slide each. So with our, because obviously diversity and inclusion are two of our is something that CHARMEU and the European project is looking for. So in the application process, applicants were asked to tick an inclusion tick box if they thought that they were a member of an underrepresented group. And in this way, they availed of an additional 10 points in terms of the assessment for their candidacy in the CHARMEU Masters. So the CHARMEU inclusivity team contacted any of the candidates who ticked that box and offered essentially a short assessment process. So that's either a phone call, a 100-word paragraph, or a 1 to 2 minute video recording basically why they thought they were entitled to those additional 10 points. And then obviously the candidate is asked to provide any supplementary documentation from their own jurisdiction that proves that they are who they are and they have these needs. And then the assessment process, the work package 16 then presented to the academic board, essentially that this candidate was eligible for the 10 inclusion points, but no sensitive or personal data or the nature of why was not shared with the academic board. So that was for inclusion. And then very similarly, next page, yeah. Very similarly then for the grant request. So obviously we didn't want finance to be an obstacle for people participating in our challenge-based program. So again, if students required some financial assistance, they could apply for a grant. And again, very similar assessment process, which was led by the work package 16. And again, the results of that assessment went to academic board, just to say that the candidate was eligible. And again, no personal information was shared. And that's how we've built inclusion into some of our quality processes and some of the student journey from the very beginning of the student journey. Okay, sorry. Okay, and then here I might hand over to Jake. Jake, do you want to take the floor? Jake is our work package lead for the Master's pilot.
Thanks, Roisin. Yeah, so I'm Jake Byrne, based in Trinity College, lead on work package 7. So work package 7 is the piloting and evaluation of the Master's program. And as part of that, we didn't want to necessarily, because obviously we got a report as part of the project, but we didn't want to necessarily duplicate effort and have a different evaluation process to what we could do for quality assurance. So we tried to align the work between the subgroup 2.5 and quality with the work within work package 7 to make sure that, essentially we're sort of collecting the same things that we need to. So we work sort of very closely with the quality group on the collection of data. Could I go to the next slide? So for those who aren't familiar with the CHARM Masters, here's just an overview of the structure. So there's been you've probably heard Roisin sort of talked about phase 1 being just completed. So phase 1 is basically like our phases are like semesters. So there's 3 semesters across the program. The first one is called the preparatory phase. This has 3 modules as part of it. So social innovation, sustainability, and transdisciplinary research. And these are delivered to the students all together, so they're distributed across the different universities. But the content from each of the modules is sort of it might be delivered from one location, but it's beamed out to all the students across the different partners. So that has sort of finished in February, and now we're into phase 2, which is called the flexible phase. So this is where students will have a choice between 3 themes. So life and health is one theme, Water is another theme, and food is the last theme. So these again have smaller numbers of students in each of those, and they also have a mobility connected to them as well. So the students will travel as part of choosing a particular theme. And then finally, there is the capstone phase again. So this part doesn't have to have necessarily another mobility associated with it, but students will work together in teams with academic supervisors and extra academic actors to work on sort of challenges, bigger challenges based on the knowledge that they've developed in the preparatory and flexible phases. So this is just a quick overview of the structure if you're not aware of the master's program. Could you go to the next slide, please? So this is just a like a sort of an overview of the data collection points that we are working on as part of the masters. So at time 1, we had the pre-survey. So that was before or just at the start of phase 1, and that sort of explored things such as that Roshan has sort of touched on in terms of the admission process, registration, information on the website, but then also students' sort of expectations as well of maybe where they want to go afterwards, why they chose to do it, maybe there's some of their sort of demographic information about where they come from, and the disciplines that they came from, and some questions around sort of inclusivity as well as part of that. So that was sort of like a snapshot at the start. And we also looked at sort of, maybe some of their prior experiences with technologies and different learning approaches, just to sort of give us an idea about their sort of prior experience with some of the methods that we are going to use within the program. Then at the end of the preparatory phase, at time 2, we've already now delivered a phase survey and a module survey. Actually, we delivered that as a single unit. And then we're also sort of collecting sort of minutes from the academic board and the student staff council. So, and wherever possible, we're sort of trying to embed these data collection exercises into sort of the formal processes and organizational structure within the CHARM Masters. This is to sort of try to make sure that it is, it's embedded within the practice within the programs, and it can be then emulated as well, should we sort of take on new programs and such as well. So that it's not just at the project level, but actually it's been embedded within the practice. So again, we have a similar phase and module sort of surveys at the end in time 2, so that'll happen in the summertime. Again, further minutes that have come on board. Actually, I might just sort of comment on the student staff council. So that has student representatives and staff where they come together and they can discuss issues. And then the minutes from that can go on to the academic board as well. But it's a great opportunity to collect sort of feedback that might not be captured through surveys. And then also during the summer as well, we're going to do sort of focus groups with the administrative staff and the teaching staff as well to get some of their feedback on how things are going and input back into to improve the program. And then similarly at the end of the capstone, we have the similar metrics that we're going to use, and then obviously we'll have student assessment results and the finalized results. Now we do have phase results as well that we will be monitoring as well in terms of students' progression. And then at the end as well, in addition, we'll have a post-survey as well. So that'll be sort of like to try to capture the sort of the final point. So for the pre-survey and the phase survey, we actually did have dedicated time where we had allocated a period of time where students would be in attendance to complete these, and we found, as you sort of see, at least the numbers coming back and completing are not too bad. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So this is just to talk a little bit about the sort of the process in terms of what we're sort of thinking in terms of how the we're collecting all this information, but like how is we going to actually turn this into recommendations and actions for improving the program. So we're collecting lots of those data points that I mentioned on the previous slide. So that's sort of the evaluation data. We still have sort of informal or sort of feedback that is just coming sort of naturally as it would from the teaching staff and the administrative staff. So that's being collected and minuted. Then obviously the work groups have various different inputs. In particular, they're inputting into the actual formulation of those surveys as well. And so we work actually quite closely with the work packages in terms of designing those to make sure that there's questions asked for that. But then they are also engaged in the activities, so they input into the process. And then the idea is that the academic board, and we have a meeting coming up next week where this information will be presented, and the idea is that we'll be recommendations and actions made on this information that's being collected. So that, you know, I don't want to preempt any of the recommendations or actions that would be taken, but these are the types of things, you know, it could be clarifications and improved communications that might need to be on the website, for example, for recruitment, or maybe the regulations for current students need to be clarified. Recommendations for module changes, so that will probably impact the next iteration of the master's program. Maybe do assessments need to be altered? We actually have altered some assessments on the fly based on student feedback already. So those need to be collected as well. So then website edits obviously might be linked to those, or amended processes and procedures as well. So as sort of Roisin has alluded, you know, this is a work in progress. We're sort of seeing how we can align the various different processes across the partners and improve upon the program as it currently is. Next slide, please. So I'm going to present some preliminary data that we've got. This is by no means a exhaustive presentation, because that would be that'll be a long presentation in itself. So just going to summarize some of the data that we've got to date. So in terms of the pre-survey evaluation, we had 67 responses out of the 70 that we had at the start of the program. So I think that's a pretty good, completion rate. I think having the dedicated time, like I mentioned, made a big difference to that. So we collected, profile information, like I mentioned. You know, we have sort of descriptions of their disciplines and their background, and what teaching methods that they may have engaged with, and then various different sort of metrics around their satisfaction with the registration process. So some sort of suggested sort of recommendations, you know, might include the sort of clarification around mobility options and requirements on the website. I think some of those changes have actually already been implemented. Clarity around the sort of deadlines for applications and deadline and dates and so on. I think we've done that as well for the next recruitment process. Less emails with more information was another sort of suggestion from students. But I think also that some of these are a little bit of a consequence of the quick timeline that we were actually we were developing things as they were happening as well. So I don't think it's representative of how practice would be in the next iteration as well. Sort of checklists for application documents. So there's some good examples of possible improvements. Getting confirmation emails when they receive when they submit their documents. Clarity around the payment process and so on. Yeah, so that's the sort of a quick overview of the sort of pre-survey. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of the phase and actually the module evaluation, they were sort of delivered together as a single survey, just to, it made it a little bit long, but again, we dedicated an hour to the process. So that was actually more than adequate as well. I think most students completed well within that hour. So we had 46 responses in total. We did have some additional responses, but they were incomplete. So that's sort of a 69% out of the 67 that were still engaged in the program at this stage. We sort of, these are just like some samples of the information that we're collecting at a sort of a phase level. So in terms of the workload, in terms of the engagement within sort of learning activities, this is like assessment and everything. So we have a bit of a distribution there. So I think we sort of need to sort of delve into that. Perhaps we might need to look as well as in the wording of the question and whether it was confusing to students and whether they understood it. But this is across all the 3 modules and it's per week. So there's a bit of a distribution there. We also looked at the services that students could avail of. And the interesting thing here is that, you know, because the students are based in different campuses, we had to see just do a little bit of analysis to see what the sort of mean response was at each location as well. So as you can see, you know, some things perform very well in all locations, whereas others maybe are not performing as well as in others. And there's also the cases that maybe the students haven't availed of certain services in certain locations as well. So there's actually an additional layer as well of the number of responses for each of these. So even some of the lower numbers we need to just sort of be careful of, because they may only be based on 1 or 2 responses as opposed to being representative as well. So but it is interesting to look at, and definitely offers in areas for improvement. And then in terms of the educational principles that Roisin has referred to, we sort of had this idea of, like, you know, what were the sort of top 3 educational principles that you engaged with, and the least or the least engaged with principles. And there's actually quite a bit of a variety actually across that. So that's something that we'll probably monitor, because we've only gone through one phase. Really what we're interested in is how that sort of progresses through the various different phases. And so in terms of sort of recommendations, I think we need to sort of make sure that there's a greater balance of workload across modules, probably to ensure sort of equity of services across the partners, and address concerns around programmatic assessment. I don't have a graph on that, but there was some, it was distributed, but there was some confusion around or lack of confidence in the assessment process as well, because we're doing programmatic assessment. That's another presentation in its own right, so I'm not going to go into that here. We also want to sort of monitor the disparity maybe in those educational principles, and we also want to monitor the students' perceived ease of use of the virtual learning environment. So we have the sort of 3 main platforms there: Teams, Scorian ePortfolio, and Moodle, and they sort of vary in terms of their potential perceived ease of use by students. So we just need to keep an eye on that and see if that changes over the phases, or if there's consistently difficulty in using them, and then maybe we need to address those interfaces. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the and just like some representative graphs from the module evaluations. So in terms of content, we looked at sort of, is there duplication of content across the modules, or even within the modules themselves. Again, we do sort of have a little bit of a spiral curriculum as well. So we do want to go across the same material again, but just, you know, going deeper or applying it in different contexts as well. So we need to make sure that that distinction is captured in our questions. There's also, in terms of the content, you know, that was sort of like about communication and accessibility in terms of, you know, were students happy with how accessible and in time the information was communicated. In terms of, you know, were staff available for, you know, answering and addressing queries? Was the feedback useful that they got on their various different assignments? So they got a lot of assignments as part of the programmatic assessment. So that feedback was very important for them to be able to progress. And actually, sorry, the graph down the bottom as well is about the level at which the information was pitched. I think particularly transdisciplinary research has some interesting data in it. That's actually one of the modules I coordinate, and that it was almost sort of too complex and too simple at the same time. I think yeah, I could go into that, but I think there's elements of prior disciplines and their experience with research or not means pitching this module is an interesting one, but that's something to dive into at another time. The best aspects that were sort of reoccurring, we're mentioning the staff and the sort of practical approaches, whereas areas for improvement maybe are a little bit more in depth on occasion. Now this may be a little bit of a result of the actual structure in terms of it being a preparatory phase. It's meant to give you sort of transversal skills and get everybody to to the same level when they finish phase one, and that the flexible phase actually goes deeper. But maybe that's more about a communication piece and an expectations management as well. But it's, you know, it's definitely something we should explore with students. And then greater alignment between specific sessions as well. I think that's, you know, in terms of that duplication, it sort of reoccurred a few times. So next slide, please. So yeah, this is just my sort of general reflections on the process to date. I think it's been going generally well. I think there's definitely lots to learn, and it, you know, we're piloting the actual surveys themselves. So we're actually looking at the data that's coming back. Is it useful? Can we maybe, you know, might we remove some questions? Might we add in other questions? And then looking at the you know, the progression of students from each you know, time to the next as well. So I think we're doing relatively well. I think that alignment of the project data collection and evaluation with the actual quality assurance framework, I think is very important as well. So we're not duplicating effort, and we're aligning all the different parts together as much as we can. I think I'll leave it there.
Thanks very much, Jake. Thank you. So now I want to go on to, you know, they all say, I mean, quality is continuous quality improvement. So you're never in a stable, static space. There is always something there that is forcing you to reconsider what you have developed so far. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. So we have obviously some triggers, as I say, for maturing our model. So one thing is just in terms of our internal triggers, we have, as the students progress through the masters, their needs and the evolution of CHARMEU trigger further development of the model. So like in phase 2, which is the phase we're in now, the mobility experience commence. So we need to ensure that we're evaluating our mobility experiences. We have students in phase 3 going on for a student capstone project. So we need to have an ethics approval process to approve those projects. And we also, at the moment, there's a call out for challenge projects and supervisors for phase 3. And we all need to develop a supervision model, policy, a supervision policy. So these are all the work that, as you obviously have to plan in and what your lead time is. Obviously, at the moment, we have the marketing campaign for the Masters Iteration 2. So we're getting the opportunity to redo our admission process and our inclusivity process, so rerun it for the second time, so we get more lessons, and hopefully not as the feedback we got, as Jacob said, or was really about the compressed time frame, but hopefully we have better opportunities to hit the standard we want to in this phase. Now, the external triggers to mature the quality model. We have Torch as our research project under the CHARMEU umbrella. So we need to integrate institutional research into our quality model, because at the moment it's based on one single program as the program. So research has to come in. The unique framework for quality of European universities was presented to final dissemination, obviously, was in September 2020. And that again triggers our maturity, because now, even though, you know, that model hasn't, you know, it's available, but it has to go through approval processes, and as Anna has said, it needs to have legislative changes to enable its usage. But at least it shows us what the expectations of an external quality assurance model are, so we can use that as some sort of a reference as to what's needed, what the expectations are, where we need to go, how we can address the gap where we are now to where we need to be in, say, in 4 years' time. As I said, we've got the addition of 3 new partners, so University of Würzburg, I met Doris last night for the first time, representatives there, Abu Academia University and Hochschule Ruhr-West universities. So as I said, we'll need to introduce the considerations and requirements of the regulatory frameworks in Germany and Finland, and we need to review the CHARMEU policies and procedures with these new partners and amend to recognize new partner institutions or new partner needs. So the work is never done. Just because you've got to publish and you think you can relax, this is our summer project. This summer, our summer is already taken up. Next one. So yes, so this is just the unique project. Obviously, the MBO website link is there, and that's there. So strategies and policies, policy implementation, evaluation, monitoring, and improvement. So what the moment we have is a quality model that's focused on a program. We need to bring that up to a quality model that's focused on an alliance at the alliance level. So, you know, I think one of the things with each alliance is that we've all had different starting points. We all have different products. Some of us are doing full programs. Some of us are looking at shared modules. Some of us are looking at physical campuses. So every alliance is looking at something different. But at some stage, as I said, we will need to be externally evaluated, whether that is through the quality framework for European universities. That remains to be seen, but that is at least a benchmark where we need to go. So how do we get there, and where are you now? So what I'm going to do is run a little, if you want to change the screen, now to run the survey now. So this survey is, I call it the matrix tool. So all of you, if you're assuming that you're quality people, can I highly recommend that you go to the European Quality Assurance Forum. If you don't go to the European Quality Assurance Forum, EQAP it's called, and that's run every year, usually in November, because that is a place where you will get lots of learning, not just about European approach, but quality in general. So the tool I have, I call it the Matrix tool, is 5 phases of quality assurance, and I need you to vote in terms of answering a question. You want to? So I think if you can, you'll be able to answer this question on your phones, on the app, if you can open your app. But one of this is essentially quality assurance is related to so this is how you're going to do it. So this will be very, yeah. So one of the phases is at the moment where you think you are in terms of quality assurance. So this would be quality assurance is related to very restricted numbers of aspects of your work. So this might be, and then, yeah, so this is the first one. Because if you're a very early alliance or like starting out, this might relate to you. So the next question.
Maybe we need to wait for people to vote because we don't have them yet. And online they have a small lag. We need to wait a few seconds if you want to see the answers, maybe.
Okay, you've got 2 votes so far. So yeah, because it's just the way that it's. Sorry, I didn't realize this was going to look like this. Because there's actually 5 questions in that one question.
You can do it on the website as well. You just below the live, you have a interactivity module, and then you have the 5 phases and the 5 questions, and you can vote for each phase. On the website, on Imagine. Yes. In the app. Yes, on the quality session behind, underneath the live, the quality live.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, we're all getting used to this.
Yeah, not so rapid.
Not so fast.
Okay.
Is it possible to come back to see the answers if you scroll through the questions? I'm just concerned that it will take up too much time. Sorry.
So you want to go back to your slide?
No. Can we go to the next phase, the next question in the survey? So yeah, no. So you've got rid of those already 3 votes there, but they've disappeared.
Because it's the phase 2. You asked me to do phase 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So this is quality assurance related to restricted number of aspects. No, it's the same question though. Okay, again, so this is phase 3. So you can see there's a maturation growing up. So this is quality assurance becomes more and more part of the quality assurance related. Sorry, somebody needs to come up there. I did that in the last session, don't worry. Quality assurance is becoming more and more part of the normal working pattern of all the staff. And then phase 4, quality assurance is related to all relevant aspects. And then phase 5 is quality assurance is concerned with all relevant aspects. So you can see it's like a maturity model going from going from essentially it's ad hoc to embedded. You know, most of us are only at phase 1 or phase 2. Okay, so I'm very surprised if somebody tells me from their European Alliance University that they are, oh, very good. They are you know, restricted access. As you can see here, we're all, as I said at the very beginning, in the storming and forming and storming phases of our quality assurance. So that is no surprise at all. So 66.7% of us are saying it's related to very restricted access, and then, you know, 16% saying it takes place on an ad hoc basis. And there's an interesting one here: responsibilities of stakeholders is unclear. There's only 1 vote. Again, there are very small numbers of votes. But what I might do is just in terms of time. Oh, look at this! Very good. Again, very small numbers of people voting. I don't know whether that's an access issue on the tool. But what I will do as a result of this, I will circulate this tool. It was presented, I think, at EQUAP in 2015 by people from Maastricht University, and I just adopted it as one of my favorites. And so I use it in my own internal quality assurance in Trinity College as well. So yeah, we're getting very small numbers of votes. So what I might do is just go back then to my presentation, and I'll provide the link to that tool, and that you can have that maybe to inform yourselves in terms of where you are. Okay. So this is where we obviously want to end up. This is where we want to end up. We want to end up with a mature quality model. We want to end up with an organizational culture across now 8 different universities, that is supportive of quality. We want to ensure that our internal and external quality assurance systems are all working together for effective performance and efficiency in terms of quality. Because I think, again, integration is one of the keys that we're looking for. And as we are a virtual university, it's integration in a virtual way is what we want to achieve. So we've gone through the forming and storming. We're currently in a transitional phase, I suppose you could say, because of the fact that we've added new partners, and we are growing our model, I suppose, to respond to internal and external triggers. But we do know it's a journey, and you know, I'm very interested to hear the journey of other people who have gone through this. I'm happy to take any questions. I think is that the last slide? Oh, well, sorry. Our outstanding challenges. Okay, keep going. Yeah, okay. So I think these are some of the topical questions for this governance forum. Are the issue of legal identity. Quality, as you know, anybody who's here is a quality person in terms of you're working within legislation, which is a national jurisdiction legislation. And without a legal identity, you've got these tensions, as I said before, between jurisdictional legislative requirements and alliance level regulations. And that they will, I think, remain until this question is resolved. So, for example, how these have impacted CHARMEU to date. So we have obviously initial accreditation, automatic recognition of programs under the European approach to quality assurance of joint programs. That's really a bottom-up negotiated process because we don't have that certainty of a legal identity. So, you know, it is really, there are wins and losses in all of these negotiations with partners involved. But again, I think there does need to be probably more legislative changes to facilitate automatic recognition across the different jurisdictions. So the other kind of thing for anybody, again, who's a quality person, is you're dealing with complaints and appeals procedures. So obviously, with a level 1 complaint or appeal, we will deal with that within CHARMEU. But then, if the person wants to take their appeal forward to outside CHARMEU, well, then at the moment, the University of Barcelona is the coordinating university. So any level 2 complaints and appeals report to the University of Barcelona's policies and procedures. But they refer to the Spanish court system. So our appeals board has a concern about the rights of students to appeal in any of the countries as they are students of 5 universities, and also how we can ensure equity among students in this environment. So it's not going to be easy for a student in Ireland or a student in Hungary to bring an appeal to the Spanish court system. It's just those kind of things that when you're in a legal entity and you have, certainty at all levels. But so for level 2 complaints and appeals, we haven't had any yet. Fingers crossed, and we hope that we could go through our journey without them. But it will be a test. If that happens, we will be tested. And then this is just another example. So in CHARMEU, in terms of reimbursement of fees, we had made a decision that if a student withdrew, that we would not reimburse their fees, because we're in a project environment, every month all money counts, etc. But one of our partners in their national jurisdiction, if a student withdraws, they had to reimburse fees. So one student did withdraw, and it was in that jurisdiction, and the university partner involved did reimburse the fees. So that still tells you the tension that you have between individual universities and individual jurisdictions, and trying to have something that works on top of those. So they're just in terms of quality, because obviously all of these are quality issues. You want to provide certainty, but there are these tensions that exist and continue to exist until the current work of the European project continues. So the next, okay. So then the other outstanding issue is the question of the European degree. So obviously we're awaiting the European Commission policy that enables collaboration. And the pilots they have announced, one for legal entity and one for European degree. So those pilots are due to start in the near future. The other question, will alliances be granted awarding authority in our own rights? So will CHARMEU be an awarding body? So we'd only have to have a single parchment with the CHARMEU logo instead of a single parchment with 5 logos or 8 logos, as it's going to be. If the issue of the legal entity is involved, do we need it, or do we need an agile and consolidated European approach? One of the words I've been using from the very beginning, I think my very first CHARMEU meeting, which was in Budapest in February 2020, just before COVID happened, was we need supra, so things that that all of the jurisdictions can agree to, but operate supra the various jurisdictional issues. And then again, no matter what the future of the European initiative is in terms of European universities, we now have students who are enrolled in an award. We have the responsibility for the continuing quality assurance of that award, and we have, we have to maintain program records, student records. We will have to respond to, recognition inquiries by NAREC NX around Europe about our master's program. So even if the larger project, does not go ahead as we foresee, or in a changed manner, we still, because we have students who are enrolled in an award, we still have the responsibilities to those students and to the quality assurance and to the maintenance of the details of those program learning outcomes, etc., so that our students can apply for jobs and have their transcripts, even if we're getting those requests in 15 years' time. So as people of quality, our responsibilities don't finish. Our responsibilities are ongoing. I think that is the last slide. Yes. So happy to take any questions, or any questions you think about maybe what the challenges are from your perspectives in terms of quality. About the challenges of either initial accreditation or the challenges of ongoing quality assurance, because obviously once it's accredited, you've got to ensure that quality assurance is in place. So happy to hear what you think the big questions are in terms of quality accreditation from your perspective. Any takers? And Anna and Jake are also here to answer questions on your behalf. So you can, don't have to bring them up to me. I'll just see if we got any questions on our app. Okay. Okay. Happy to take any questions online either, for any of you who are using the Imagine platform to ask questions. And I apologize, I see that we had some difficulties with people accessing the online at the very start of this. So hopefully everybody can is able to hear and participate. So questions and queries, yes, please.
I have some technical question. So you start from this question. So each of the qualification accredited a new program in their institution. Is correct? Or
No.
you start from already existing?
Oh yes, no, it wasn't an existing program. This was a brand new program.
Okay, so each
So-
institution accredited go through the accreditation, joint accreditation of a new
Of a brand new
course.
program. Yes, that wasn't currently being delivered in any university.
Yes, for this. And it was so about the enrollment. Students are enrolled in each of the university.
Yes, I have my colleague here.
So I'm Marielle Rio, I'm the Joint Virtual Administrative Officer from Montpellier. And yes, indeed, all the students are registered in all 5 universities to allow them to access all the services in each university.
And there is a compulsory mobility scheme.
Yes,
So you start in one university and then from the second stage.
yes, we have different types of mobilities that are offered to the CHARMEU students. And we do have the phase mobilities, so like a semester, and it is mandatory for the students to do at least one phase mobility.
And in terms of degree, we deliver a joint degree or?
Yeah, a joint degree, so it's a joint master's,
Yes.
level 9. Or level 9 in Ireland, it'll be level 7 in Europe.
Okay, and so the agency, the first, the starting point was that to choose an agency in a country, an accreditation agency, and the agency, since the beginning, contact the other 4 national accreditation agencies, and you work, if I understand correctly, on a joint record template, considering all the requirements in the 5 countries to facilitate the recognition of the accreditation, or not? You use only your the
European
Spanish rules, and then you work with the other agencies for recognition. I don't know if
So I'll start off with that, is connecting our thoughts there. Essentially, we work with ENQA,
yes.
and we work with all the agencies in each of the 5 jurisdictions to design the process. But in the underneath the European approach, you have to choose one agency to be the coordinating agency, and we chose ECHO. And then the instrument was the European approach to joint programs.
I know, but I for other joint program, some years ago, so at the beginning, they choose an agency in a country, but the process was not a joint process involving the other national agency, but they work only with that country's rule, and then the recognition was difficult.
So Anna, if you want to, did you hear that question, Anna?
I heard the first time, the last part, I didn't catch it. I didn't hear well. But the main thing is that the evaluation didn't follow the Spanish legislation. It followed the European approach methodology, right? It's a methodology approved by the European Higher Education Ministers responsible for education in 2015. Okay, and in theory, it's a methodology that you shouldn't add national standards. And that's what we did. So the standards are the 9 standards that are approved. They are the basic things that you should ensure for a program to be of quality, and that's it. So we didn't add Spanish. We didn't add Spanish requirements to the Spanish legislation. That's the main point of the European approach. The thing is that then when you go to the recognition of the degrees, then you face problems with the national legislation. That's what I think that has changed right now in Spain. But the methodology, it's an European methodology, and any agency that is registered in the European Quality Assurance Registers can do this. So it could be any of the 5, because the 5 countries had agencies registered in ECAR, so it could be any of us, and it wouldn't be any problem. So imagine that it does HEFRES from France, okay? If they did the process, they would send to ACU the report, and we would send them to our ministry. And nowadays, in 2021, we wouldn't have any problem at all in order for this decree to be registered in our national register, right? So it's this procedure. Okay, so nowadays, any assessment carried out by an ECAR registered agency, it's going to be accepted in Spain. It doesn't matter if it is done by ACU or by an ECA or by, I don't know, CERES or whatever, or QQI in Ireland, okay? It wouldn't matter for us. Yeah, but the last part, I don't know if I have answered the question.
This is a positive answer because I know that some countries accept the European approach, use the European approach, but they can add additional requirements for recognition. For example, I know it was the case in France. So you didn't have any problem with the recognition in France?
I think that Royce is going to be able to answer that more, but yes, of course. And then comes the reality. I mean, in theory it works, and nowadays in Spain it's going to work. But the reality is that when you go to the national registration, for instance, in ACU, that's why we had these 2 extra points, because we had to fill an ex-ante form. There's an application with 2 extra points, one from justification, one from expected results, okay? So the ministry would expect information and assessment from these 2 extra points. So that would pose a problem, okay? So nowadays we have removed this barrier, but we faced the problem and then. But we had this communication with, you know, the CHARMEU project and the ministries. The coordination was very well done. I mean, since the beginning of the project, there was coordination with all the agencies and also all the ministries involved in the project. But I do know that they face problems, and Roisin is going to explain better than myself that. Okay.
I mean, for example, I think in France you have your mentions, you know, your venue title. So I think there had to be some legislative change in France to ensure that we could have multidisciplinary titles. And anybody who's can correct me if I'm wrong there. And the other thing in France was that in order to progress to doctoral education, in France, you need 120 CTS. Our master's is 90 CTS. So French students have to bring with them another 30 CTS at that level in order to reach that 120. But I mean, that's just an example, you know, a French example. That these are the kind of things. This is why it's so important to consult and communicate as early as possible, so you can try and work out solutions to those. But I mean, everything has worked out with a solution, but it's just a case of, you know, what we want is, you know, not to have such barriers in our place, because, you know, some people might not be as successful, and it might end up to projects not going ahead, things like that. So you want to try and make it as streamlined as possible. I think this experience with all the quality agencies, and obviously with the support of NCOR as well, you know, has further I mean, some people holding back, you know, to see what happens. Now they've got the lessons learned from this process, and hopefully that will inform and bring others into the realm. I know that the European approach is not active in all countries at the moment, and so hopefully now that there's more experience with it, that will help that situation. We're at lunchtime, so what I might do is thank very much my colleagues Anna Pades from ACU and Jake Byrne from Trinity. And if there's any questions that you want answered, please come up to me. I'm here today and tomorrow. I'm happy to talk to you and listen to you and learn from you. Okay, thank you. And can I also thank Marie-Hélène, who ended up asking the question, even though she was here as a participant. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you, Marie-Hélène. Thank you. Bye-bye.